Welcome to the Short Funk Podcast. I'm Tom Barbalet, and today, refusing to be suspended. This actually came up in a Short Funk recording, and it's beautiful the way these Short Funk recordings actually remind me of topics, remind me of things that I don't normally talk about. In the last year that I was in high school, it was called college in Australia, but that's just what they called it. It was the year 12, the final year of high school. I represented a student whose father was a union leader. I'd known this guy in passing, but there was an incident where he was beaten up in the local shopping mall, and he was bleeding really badly, and he couldn't get any medical attention. He actually ended up walking into a pharmacy, and he had to buy the tissues that he used to mop up his face. It was really quite a disturbing circumstance. It was unclear what had led up to him being beaten up. It was unclear why the shopping mall had done so little in this circumstance. And funnily enough, it was also a shopping mall where teenagers, and I'd had this experience as well, were frequently stopped by security guards just in a kind of stop and frisk mentality. So it was very strange, firstly, that this event had occurred in this mall, but also that security hadn't been on hand to offer some form of protection to this fellow. I raised this at the school. I was a student representative on the board as well, and nothing was done about it. So I wrote to the local paper to explain the circumstances. The problem with writing to the local paper was that the school got some art supplies from one of the, or actually I think it was the mall itself supplied art supplies to the school periodically, not in a large amount, probably only a couple of $100 every semester, if that. And there was this curious circumstance where I had raised an issue. No one had done anything about the issue at the student level, at the school board level. But to put it in the local paper besmirched this mall and raised concern that, I was saying something against this sponsor of the school. Although I didn't know that was the case until I'd actually written the letter. Although I don't think it would have changed my perspective. None of the following was put in writing. None of the following was formalised. It was just part of a physical intimidation tactic by, I think, the vice principal at the time. But what happened following was that I was told to leave school for a period of time, and I was told not to attend my classes because I'd represented the student in the local paper. And I said no. I said these classes are going towards my university entrance, and I'm not going to be damaged for representing a circumstance which I'd raised in two separate bodies and which nothing had been done about. Nothing satisfactory had come of this. And it was my responsibility, actually, as the representative I was, to continue to raise this until it came to a forum where this matter could be resolved. So what happened was I would attend my classes, and the vice principal would try and pull me out of these classes. And it was the most curious thing, because a few of the classes I attended without incident. But then one class, he pulled me out of the class, and I have a means of dealing with these kind of circumstances where I'm not in any way confrontational. In fact, I'm anti-confrontational. But this fellow just lost it, and he ended up swinging at me, like physically swinging at me. Sadly, this wasn't the last time that another person swung at me in these kind of circumstances, but it was one of the first, and particularly an adult. And the class who had stopped doing their lesson looked out and gasped at this individual completely losing his, we know what he was losing. In any case. And yes, I just stood there. Eventually, based on this kind of ongoing pattern of harassment, I resigned from my posts, but continued to be a student. And this shows, I guess, a degree of idealism that I had through certainly high school, where I actively was a student representative and took the matter very seriously. When political parties started entering student politics, which was at university, I had nothing more to do with student politics. In fact, the whole censoring of discourse and the nature of, two parties that say exactly the same thing just disgusted me to my core, and I had nothing more to do with student politics, even though a number of the issues that occurred at university, like, for example, the starting of the HEX tax on the year that I started, would have, in normal circumstances, got me very heavily involved with student politics, but the fact that student politics at university was run by two parties meant that I had nothing to do with either. And it's very curious to me that this nature of, me being a representative and a representative that had things happen in the process of making those representations strikes me as kind of curious. I think I'm probably more cautious now, although I'm the vice president of the local community action group and do a wide variety of other things. But this little footnote associated with refusing to be suspended, I do wonder that if any of this had followed in written documentation, and I think, honestly, the vice principal was genuinely scared of me. I represented someone who, through non-violent resistance, had certainly broken down any degree of authority that this individual thought they had. But if any of it had been written down, it would be rather curious in terms of, having a written record associated with what I had been suspended for and the reasons that this individual tried to keep me out of class. In any case, a footnote to Barbalet long ago. Tom Barbalet in San Jose, signing out.